Hello and welcome to Youth in Agriculture, and as always, this is where I bring you to different parts of this country where we get to feature Kenyan youth who have identified opportunities along the value chain. Today we are coming to you from Lari in Kiambu County, where we will be featuring George Maturi, who is an organic farmer and has integrated varieties of activities on his farm. Today we are going to be focusing on Azolla farming, and for those of you who don't know what Azolla is, it's an aquatic plant which has been tested and proven to be very ideal, very rich in protein content, and is being used widely by livestock farmers. So George will be telling us more about Azolla and how you can be able to plant it and how it can be able to increase your production. George, hey. Thank you so much for having us today.
You're much welcome.
Thank you for this is Youth in Agriculture. Yeah. So tell us more about how you got into farming and why you chose this direction of organic farming.
So I'm George Maturi, the founder of Comfort Worms and Insects, and I've been into farming for now about 7-8 years now. Since I started, I finished high school, I got direct into farming. I started doing chicken. Though it was not that big, I was aspiring to grow and get to be producing more chicken, eggs. But the challenge of feeds started driving me away from chicken farming. I started looking at the alternative sources of feeding the chicken. That is now where I got into what I'm currently doing, the worms farming, insects, and Azolla. So I have been now able to try out those 3 types of farming, evaluating which one is good for the chicken, which one is commercially viable. And so far I have been able to evaluate that and see which one can be good for the chicken or either for any kind of livestock, so that it can either help me or any other farmer to be able to lower their cost of production.
How did you get into Azolla farming? How is it? Did you do research? Did somebody share the idea with you?
I have been so much into trying on looking on new things that are happening, especially in the agriculture sector. Once I started with the earthworms, then I got into black soldier flies. Then now later on, when I was into black soldier flies, I was also still trying to look into a way which can be more easier for me to produce a source of protein for the chicken. So, and that is when I came across the Azolla. Mostly on the internet, I got a lot of information. That is where I got to know about the Azolla. From then, I learned how I can be able to produce it, what it requires. Then now, from that point, I started looking onto how I can get now the seeds or the plant itself so that I can plant. And after trying to search for it for a number of months, I finally got it, and that is how I was able to introduce it at the farm.
I can see that we have Azolla right here.
Yeah.
So you can take us through the entire process of how you plant it and how long it takes and how you harvest it and how exactly do you feed it.
So now for the Azolla, it's pretty easy to produce. As I was saying, I was also trying to look into a way that one can be able to produce easily the sources of protein. So I got to run different ways on how you can be able to produce the Azolla, because one, what you require is just water and nutrients. So nutrients mainly, we can talk about manure, composted manure, organic fertilizer. Other people use synthetic fertilizers. So there are different options one can use, but for me I have been using mainly manure or compost, vermicompost to say. Because once I use it, I see production is much faster, and considering that I'm into organic farming, I look into options that won't go into the synthetic way. So once I have now the compost, I need now a pond. That is how I'm able to get these ponds, to come up with these ponds. Very shallow. We make a pond of 1 foot deep, because the more it gets to be deeper, you need more nutrients. So we just make a pond that is 1 foot deep. We we put the compost. We look at the size. Different sizes, we use different amounts of the compost. Then we, after now putting in the compost, now that is when we introduce the water. so that if there is anything that is going to float from the compost, we can be able to scoop it out. Then now the third step that we do, now that is introducing now the Azolla. The Azolla do not produce seeds per se, because it does split. So the growth, how it grows, it continues to split from one plant, it gets to be 2 plants, 3 plants, like that. So what you do, you get the plant from another farm, you come, you prepare your pond, then you introduce it in your pond. And if the conditions are okay in that pond, it continues to grow.
So it multiplies.
Yeah,
itself.
it multiplies. And for example, in this pond, it's a pond of 1.5 by 7.5. We introduce 1 kg of Azolla, and after a period of 3 weeks, we are ready to start harvesting. 21 days, you start harvesting, and you can be doing a harvest after, you can opt, depending on what you are feeding, you can opt to be doing a harvest after every 3 days, that is 72 hours, or you can opt to be doing a harvest once per week. That is depending on the amount that you are going to be taking from your pond. So if you harvest half of the pond, it will have generated again after 72 hours. When it comes to feeding, I've been feeding to the chicken, to the pigs, and it has been good. So we are able to note, mostly because of the chicken, a change of laying the eggs, because basically we do it with improved kienyeji. So they are able to, it is able to boost the production percentage. We had an increase of 10 eggs after 1 week. So we have been able to note that the effectiveness, it's very fast on mainly chicken. Also the pigs, we see the growth rate being a bit higher. When producing Azolla, we have a number of challenges. One being Azolla, sometimes you may find it drying up after feeding it or giving it the nutrients it requires, the water it requires, but of which I have learned that it's as a result of acidity. Sometimes we may use, whenever you use either raw manure, which is not composted, it kills the Azolla. If you use fertilizers in a hurry without proper measurements, also it kills the Azolla. So those are the most of the challenges that you may find when producing Azolla. Also in some places, you may find that because now you have stagnant water there, you may find that frogs are breeding in that pond. But if your pond is raised, now like this one, it's not easy for the frogs to get in here. But for the ones we have down there, at times you may find the frogs, of which it's manageable. You can control using a net around, so the frogs won't be able to get in. Another challenge, it's being able to produce in mass. Because now for you to produce, you need the space, you need now more ponds. Now, like in my case, because I'm doing now the artificial ponds, but for a farmer who may be somewhere located, somewhere maybe in a swamp area, or in somewhere you can be able to make ponds easily without even using the dam liners and such concrete, a farmer may be able to produce. But now for me, it's a challenge because I need a very flat ground. Then now from then, I'd go an extra mile on buying now the dam liners. So that is also a challenge, because now if I'm able to produce that, I can be able now to dry and be able to produce now my own feeds. Because now once I have these in dry form, I would also need now just another source of protein and the carbohydrates, and be able to produce my own whole meal now for the pigs, for the chicken, even for the cows. Once you harvest it being raw, you can use it for 3 days, being fresh, just like that. But now from then, it will start now decomposing. So if you harvest a lot, which you cannot consume within the 3 days, you need now to do value addition of it. You can now, when we go now to the value addition part of it, you need to clean it. After harvesting it, you wash it. Then now after washing or rinsing it properly and removing any foreign materials like now the manure, if there are any leaves. So after doing all that, you now need to dry. And when we go now into drying, we say you don't dry at the sun or in the open sun. You do it at a shade or at a greenhouse or at a solar dryer so that it can dry properly, keep the nutrients intact, and also making sure that it does not get spoiled. My emphasis to the farmers is to take up new technologies like the Azolla. We have Azolla, we have another type we call the duckweed. So it's pretty easy to produce because all you need is water, the manure or the nutrients, the pond. And for the pond, we use so many different types of materials. We have farms where naturally you can get or make a pond and the water won't seep through. You can make a pond from this material. This is the dam liner. You can make a pond from other polythene sheets. So it's not that much expensive to come up with a pond. Because now, for example, this pond has costed me, each pond about 2,000. Then you put in a seed of the Azolla, which would cost you 1,000. And then after 3 weeks, you'd be able to start harvesting Azolla, which is equivalent to feeding about, because per week from each pond here we harvest 10 to 15 kgs of Azolla, which can feed 100 chicken on a daily basis, because 100 chicken we need to feed them just 2 kgs on a daily basis. So for a farmer who is looking at lowering their cost of feeding either for the chicken, the pigs, the cows, or even the fish, you can be able now to produce the Azolla, substitute it with your commercial feeds, and you'll be able now to cut on the cost and be able to get something more.
To all the livestock farmers, here is a technology that you need to adopt, and George has proved that it can actually lower your cost of production. We're going to be taking a short commercial break, but when we come back, like we said before, George is an organic farmer and he's also doing worms production. He's composting. We're going to be learning more about that in a few minutes.